Abraham Lincoln was racist. In document B, lines 1 through 4, he states, "I have no purpose, directly or indirectly, to interfere with the institution of slavery in the states where it exists. I have no purpose to introduce political and social equality between the white and black races." So, what we believe that we have taken from those two sentences, Abraham Lincoln is saying he doesn't want to end slavery and he doesn't want to change anything about it where it still exists in the states. And he's also saying he doesn't want a black person in office. He doesn't want to introduce political equality. And then when he's saying he doesn't want to introduce social equality, he's saying that he doesn't want the two communities to live together. He wants the two separate communities to live in different places.
So overall what he's saying is that he is against slavery, but he doesn't want white people and black people to be equal.
In document being modified, I noticed there's a physical difference between the two, which in my judgment will probably forever forbid their living together in perfect equality, and I, as well as Judge Douglas, am in favor of the race which I belong, having the superior position.
So what he's saying is that he thinks that whites are superior to blacks, which is being racist.
Document C, modified. Today on board a boat, I saw a gentleman who had purchased 12 Negroes in different parts of Kentucky and was taking them to a farm in the south. They were chained 6 and 6 together. A small iron chain was around the left wrist of each so that the Negroes were strung together precisely like so many fish upon a trough. In this condition, they were being separated forever from the scenes of their childhood, their friends, their fathers and mothers, and the brothers and sisters, and many of them from their wives and children, and going into perpetual slavery. Tony and I are here to prove yet another reason why Abraham Lincoln was racist.
Abraham Lincoln was racist because he didn't make any efforts to release the Negroes.
Abraham Lincoln was a bystander to these events, which makes him just as bad as the people who committed these crimes.
Abraham Lincoln didn't care that the African Americans were being separated from their families forever.
Abraham Lincoln was indifferent to the blacks and acted as if he did not care if his point got across.
That is another reason why Abraham Lincoln was racist.
Document A modified the last small paragraph. Mr. Lincoln believes that the Negro was born his equal and yours, and that he was endowed with equality by the Almighty, and that no human law can deprive him of these rights. Douglas is saying this, that Lincoln believes that the Negro has the same rights as every other person, and that shows that he is not racist because he wants to give them equal rights. And he's saying that no human law can deprive him of these rights, so no human law can take away these rights from him.
In the last sentence, Lincoln actually states himself that the Negro is his equal and the equal of every living man because they are people themselves. Also, you may note that this is taken in a debate, which means that Lincoln may have to tiptoe around the line saying things that may not necessarily be true to get people to vote for him, and so he will be elected president.
So I'm going to open it up for questions. So if you have a question that you would like to pose to the other team based on the evidence that you've heard from their from the documents, then you can do so. Okay, Team A, was there a question that you wanted to pose to Team B? Antonio.
Well, I have a question in document A. Do you think you would believe all of this is true? Because this is another man saying something about this other man in a debate trying to win the presidency. Why would you believe that?
Douglas wants people to vote for him, and so he's saying he's saying that he wants slavery, and so he can't say that Lincoln wants slavery too. And so if Douglas wants slavery, then he's gonna, and he doesn't want to lie because then he might not get elected. And he's saying that Lincoln wants to have slavery.
How true it is that God renders the worst of human condition is tolerable. For me, it just sounds like he's dismissing them, like he doesn't care whether or not they survive. Like, oh, well, they seem happy, so I don't really care that they're happy and they're being sold into slavery. To me, it sounds like he just doesn't care. He's saying this because he's definitely against slavery, but it doesn't sound like he really cares what happens to them in the process. Like when he mentions how true it is that God renders these, it's not comfortable for them to be chained, and being taken away from their family, but he never says anything.
He's saying that God renders the worst of human conditions tolerable because he is saying that God is with the Negroes. He is actually saying that God has not rejected the Negroes as heathenists and barbarists. He is saying that God is with the Negroes and is trying to help the Negroes escape slavery.
So for document C, you said you think he was a bystander while the slaves were chained up, and I was wondering how is it being a bystander, because he's already trying to change slavery in the first place. Plus, if you were to be somewhere and then you were to see people chained up, I mean, you can't just go up and be like, give me those people. You can't I mean, you can say that's a bad thing, but you can't just take them away from the person.
Yeah, we have response to Nicholas's question.
Well, he could have at least he was just thinking his thoughts, and he could have at least said, you shouldn't do that, that's not right. And he at the beginning he didn't try to end slavery. Actually, he was saying he didn't want to change it in the presidential election. He didn't want to change it, anything. That was later. This is during the election.
Well, also, Abraham Lincoln was an honest man, and he knew that that man did pay for them, and that if he did pay, he felt bad for the slaves, but he also did see them having fun, dancing, playing the fiddle, and also he knew that that man who purchased them actually did pay. And so he sure wanted to write about it and keep it and remember that. And maybe if he became president, he would have said that. But he wasn't president at the time. He didn't have any authority, and he wanted to keep it true that he actually did pay.
Yesterday we were speaking about in document C whether Lincoln was a bystander or not. And you actually did make a good point that he was bystanding about 19 years before he ran for president. But you may note that this is in colonial times. People would punish other people for doing things that they didn't like at all, that much. If you remember the American Revolution, they would tar and feather people who supported the British people. Lincoln was afraid the same things would happen to him, and he might even get lynched or killed by one of the mobs that hated the black people.
But there wasn't anybody near it. They were just walking down the road, nobody there, and why couldn't he just do it? And he was a coward.
Because he was on board of a boat. He was with other people. He was in public. He was noting that he saw a gentleman with 12 or 13 or how many ever black people he had on a trout line. If he had actually gone up to the man and said to release the slaves, then the other people on the boats would have lynched him or even or even just disliked him for his life.
If he wanted to actually support freeing blacks, then he would be similar to one of the abolitionists that weren't afraid to act. Like, there were many abolitionists that we read about last year who would, who would write freely. They weren't afraid to show their points. Like Harriet Beecher Stowe, she wasn't afraid to write about something that contradicted, and it's because it was the right thing. It's to be courageous is to do the right thing no matter what everybody else thinks.
Well, I'm just gonna say people do it differently. Maybe he's not as courageous as the other abolitionists, but that does not mean he's racist. If people can show, they can change something in different ways, not by just saying let them go. They can do it slowly and surely, and like when he ended up winning the election, he ended up freeing the slaves and abolishing slavery, and so he ended up freeing them.
Just as Joseph said, if he really was against slavery, he would go out of his way to save these slaves from being taken away from their families. So, technically abolish slavery. After slavery, there was sharecropping, which is the exact same thing.
That's because...
And he didn't abolish it until many years later. Even like after that, they had discrimination and Jim Crow laws. That's not that may not be slavery, but it's still not for equal rights to the blacks.
I'm sorry, Sarah, I haven't heard from you. Do you want to add on to that?
Yeah, also even though he didn't say it in his letters and his documents that he wrote, he still might have had feelings about it, so you don't know what he was feeling. Like, he could have been scared, or he could have been happy that, he could have not been happy, but like, he could have been worried that they were gonna be in a bad place and not be safe. So there's feelings behind it. It doesn't always have to be said in the letters that he wrote or the documents that he said.
Remember how we said the last piece of this that makes it different from a debate is that there's no winner. So Team A doesn't win and Team B doesn't win because your last thing that you're trying to do is come to a consensus. So at this point, and Mahalia already was forethinking this, you can drop your assigned claim. So you guys don't have to be Team B who thinks Lincoln was not racist, and you guys don't have to be Team A who thinks Lincoln was. Now that you've heard all of the issues and all of the sides and all the different perspectives, let's see if we can come to a consensus, an agreement, as to what we really think as a class about Lincoln. So, Mahalia, can you repeat what you just said? Because I think you're kind of leading us down that path.
He was racist in some part, but he did end slavery. We have to give him that. He did do a lot of stuff. He couldn't have done all of it. He was assassinated. Like Emma said, he probably would have done more, but he was assassinated.
Maybe he was a little bit racist because he did say he favors his race, but in the end he tried his best. So it wasn't necessarily that he was extremely racist, but it sounded like his opinion kind of improved as the presidential debate and his political career went on. So it was kind of like improving how he at the beginning, when he had the first with Judge Douglas, he was like, I'm still in favor of my race, but I think they should have a little more equal rights. And then in the end, he ended trying to completely make everybody equal. Well, I think he was like what Mahalia thinks. I think he was a little racist, but I also think, though, like in document B modified, where he says that, I think he kind of, a lot of people have brought this up, though, that you kind of have to make up some stuff, though, to get into office, so then you can do what you actually want to do. Like he was saying, like he likes whites a little more than blacks. I think he may have maybe felt that way. I'm not 100% sure. There's nothing that proves that yet. But as you can see, though, yeah, he did end slavery. He did a lot of stuff for the blacks, and he could have.
If there was like a bar between the whole classroom and this was really racist and this was not, I'd be kind of like right here, because I felt like he was just like a sliver of a bit, you know, racist, but a lot of him wasn't, because he was trying to free. So any care about the slaves would be really, that would give him a lot of.
I agree with Frankie. I agree with Frankie. I don't think that he was racist, because also he was running for president, and when you're running, usually it's because you have different ideas about the other person's ideas who's running. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So Douglas thought, oh, well, we're superior, slavery is good, and Abe Lincoln said, no, that's not good. We're going to fight for what's right. So I don't think.
Myself actually believe that Lincoln is situationally racist. He became racist when he needed to become, so that people wouldn't like lynch him or mob him or kill him or cause him unbearable agony because he was in favor of the blacks, but he wasn't racist. He had to become racist to stop other people from hurting him. But once the event was over, he could go back to not being as situationally racist as he had to be when the event occurred.
So would I be correct in saying that the class's consensus, or the majority, would say that you do believe that to some extent he was racist because of some of the comments he made in the primary source documents, but you believe that his general intention was good, that he was actually trying to accomplish something that was good? Would that be an accurate summary of how you guys, or what you guys are thinking for the most part? So there's some.
Oh, I just have to say, not just the blacks, but there's a lot of Mexican immigrants coming in from the South, and that might not have happened if Abraham Lincoln hadn't freed the blacks. Because if the immigrants that came from the European countries in Mexico, and they saw that there are people enslaved here, they may not have wanted to come. They influence a lot on the culture and what goes on in our country. So he, in addition to freeing the blacks, he influenced a lot of later movements, which have made our country grow.
All right, so let's debrief this whole experience. And I have some guiding questions up here, but we don't necessarily need to go in this order. But let's start off with, what did you learn from participating in an activity like this, from the prep work all the way through the actual discussion that you had today and yesterday? Yeah.
People have a lot of different opinions about things, and you can kind of go into a discussion thinking one thing and come out seeing like other sides of the story.
Mm-hmm. Well, I learned that you can find out a lot of information and kind of get, so you have both sides of the story put into one, so you basically, you get all of the information put in one discussion, so then you can pretty much understand what's good and what's bad.
I learned that you always don't need to stick with your opinions on someone, and that if you had to be on one side, that you didn't have to believe everything you heard. You always have your own opinion. You always get to keep your own opinion, and you never have to get rid of it.
Any other things that you want to share about things?
Like Sky said, I was kind of like, I don't believe what my group statement is. I was like, at first, but then my group kind of helped me like, you keep your own opinion, but just try to like don't like yell out like, oh, I don't think he's racist at the beginning of the set. It helped me to like learn how to like keep my opinion, but be able to have my opinion in a different way away from my
What was this whole process of participating in a SAC like for you? And is this something that you'd want to apply in a different context, like in ancient civilizations or things like that? Sarah?
I thought that it's kind of like a debate, but it's not really.
But it's not.
I liked how we had like two different teams, and it was kind of like an argument about like how it was racist, but then in the end we came.
I'm going to interrupt for one moment. You don't need to write anything at this point. Just make sure you're listening to your peers. So all pencils and pens should be down, and then eyes and ears should be on the person who's speaking.
So I think that like it was a really fun experience, and I liked how we had to like take sides, but not really. And then in the end, after we heard all the information from both sides, we came to a happy medium between the two. I liked how it had a happy ending.
I liked how we questioned each other and like kind of like turned some questions against the other team. Like raise our questions.
Nicholas?
Well, I thought it was fun to participate in this SAC. And I can see you all said, you kept saying that we'll find out the difference at the end of the conversation, why it's a structured academic conversation. Instead of being a debate, and a debate, there's a lot of fighting, I think, and then you kind of, it's just kind of going, you're kind of just like screaming at the other people and stuff, and then this is like kind of a nicer way to get the point across instead of screaming at everybody.
All right, and let's go back to this term racist, because I think Daniel I think it was Daniel, you were asking like, is it really okay to even call him racist because of what was going on at that time period? So given the context, which we said context matters, right? Do you guys think that it would be appropriate to use that term racist to even describe Abraham Lincoln? Oh, yeah?
I don't think so, because it was like, it was slavery. It wasn't like the Jim Crow laws. The Jim Crow, it was like a totally different like scene. It was like he wasn't being racist. He was just expressing his opinion, really, and it wasn't the well, people weren't really racist till a lot more into time. And he wasn't racist. He was expressing his opinion, trying to become president.
Okay.
I mean, if you look at some of his speeches, like in the documents, you would see that some of them he was racist, but in the most part he wasn't. He was just he had to put some of it in, like it kind of went along. Yeah, he was just saying what he thought, and so.
I mean, I would kind of put it half and half, because at some points he was racist, and at some
But the question, I'm going to interrupt. So the question is do you think racist is even a term that we could use to describe him? So not debating once again whether or not he's racist, but is racist even an appropriate term to use to describe the comments that he made and the way that he interacted with Douglas and all of that?
So,
why? Justify.
Because like he wasn't really racist.
But is racist even a word we should use in this context? No. That's what I'm wondering. So I know I'm kind of tweaking the question. It's not, is he racist or not, but is racist a term that we could even use in this context to describe him and what he was saying and whatnot?
Well, back then, racist, I don't even know if there was.
That's a good question. Yeah,
If it was because so many people were racist back then, they were just like
Repeat that last part? So it kind of sounds like what Frankie is saying is that at that time period, it was kind of the norm, right? Like everyone kind of believed that, and the people who didn't, those are the ones that were kind of like the anomaly. They're the ones who were different, the ones who were like, no, we are all equal. So it's interesting to even think about whether that's a term that we could use given that in that context, you would have been considered weird to have not thought that.
Well, I think racist is a strong word to use against somebody, and so, I mean, I really think it was sometime, yeah, so he did, I mean, now, today we would call, some people would say he was racist because of the certain terms and words that he used against other people, but I don't think he was necessarily racist. I think he was just kind of, I think he needed those words to get into a higher position of power, so he could change things.
All right, and that was this next question, because you had a perfect segue, is can we judge people in the past by our standards today? So think about that. Can we judge people in the past by our standards today?
Okay, so what I think is that there's like a different, it's like a different society. Like in the 1860s, it wasn't, well, if you discriminate blacks, you're racist. It was, that's whatever, how everybody was. And you can't judge them by our standards because it was different. It was just different. It's not the same as today.